what came first, the chicken or the egg. You need to plan for both, right? Figure out exactly how to adjust for what you don't know in the future. Good answer, right? Easy thing to do. Plan for what you don't know.
I like the analogy of plan for the chicken and the egg. Welcome to Finance in the Clouds. Modern finance is broken, forcing finance and accounting teams to work like it's 1985, the year Excel was invented. Here we talk about the struggles finance teams face in fast-growing companies and discuss how they can spend less time surviving and more time in the clouds. I'm your host, Jake Jones, multimedia producer and brand influencer at Zone & Co. And I'm joined this week by Eric Park, Chief Growth Officer at Avocad, and Keith Goldschmidt, Director of Channel and Alliances at Zone & Co. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, super happy to be here as well. I got told by somebody yesterday that I had a voice for radio, so I'm glad to be here. Sorry you have to deal with my mug as well.
In our last podcast, we discussed the evolution of usage-based billing with Janna, Herman, and Sam Burkmon. We had a great conversation about how businesses need to prepare for variation in their business model. That's kind of what it ended up boiling down to. And so today we're going to talk about exactly that. How do you prepare for variation in your business? Now, Eric and Keith, before we really get into the topic, I kind of wanted to give you both a chance to tell us a bit about yourselves. Eric, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, Avocad, and how you guys started working with us here at Zone.
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Eric. I'm one of the co-founders and the Chief Growth Officer at Avocad. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I'm a numbers guy at heart. I started in public accounting early on in my career and then jumped quickly into ERP and have been working in technology ever since. We founded Avocad back in late 2015. We are a NetSuite solution provider, which means we resell licensing, but also do implementation and support services for our companies. Our company right now is roughly 40 people at the moment. We have our office in Atlanta, Georgia as our home base, and first got introduced to Zone as we worked with many of our companies. We have a pretty heavy footprint in SaaS and technology today. And as our company started looking at solutions for recurring billing, RevRec, and usage and consumption billing, we came across Zone naturally and have been working as a Zone partner ever since.
Awesome. That's great. We love having you. Keith, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here for us at Zone.
Sure. So thanks for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with somebody smarter than myself, like Eric. And that's really my role here at Zone, is to spend time getting to know and supporting and helping smarter people learn about Zone billing. So I run our channel and our strategic alliances, and basically that means that our valuable partners come to me. We establish partnerships and teach and enable people about Zone billing, so that they can go out and do implementations of our solutions for our customers on our behalf. By way of background, I am also an accountant, started in finance, spent about 10 years in some form of audit, kind of thought I was a lifer over there, and then found the technology side of things, and I always had a real interest in business process. So being able to translate business process from the finance and accounting world, where it's very strict and guideline oriented, to technology, where it's strategic and fun and interesting, as to how you scale and how you grow for the future, is really interesting to me. So now I find I spent some years at NetSuite directly, and find myself over at Zone, where it's a great home, and I really love the company and love our partners, and being able to work with awesome people like Eric. I got to be in their office for a week just a month ago, and
Got the full Avocad
meet all of the
experience,
employees of Avocad. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you guys both for being here and sharing a little bit about yourselves. I'm really excited to talk about today's topic with you, and so let's dive in. How can companies prepare for variation in their business? And just to kind of again explain variation a little bit, we talked about usage billing last episode, and it really just kind of boiled down to businesses need to be prepared for change and need to be flexible in their business. So, but we really never got to how, right? So let's just talk about that. How can companies prepare for variation in their business model?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question and pretty relevant for us in the way that we've grown. Since we first founded the company, I think really at the core of it, we have to understand what our potential customers and prospects are looking for in the marketplace. So, a good example of this is when we first started the company, and as we were growing, we were first a three-person company trying to figure out how we go to market, how we present our solution to customers that come to us, and ultimately how we present those in a concise way that makes sense and that is tangible for our buyers. And I think early on, what we tried to do is take the BDR or business development rep approach, where we hired sales folks and people to go out and dial for dollars, if you will, to engage with prospects to try to drum up interest in product. And that experiment ultimately failed. And I think what we learned through that and what we realized through that is that the buyer today and the end user today is very, very much educated. What I mean by that is whenever a prospect ultimately comes to us and finds us, they've already done their homework, they've done their research, they know about NetSuite, they know what they like about it, and then they have follow-up questions about that. If they come to our doors knocking and we throw a sales rep at them and not a solution architect or somebody who is intimately engaged with the product, what we found is that because users know so much already about the product, they want to go straight into talking about it. They want the details. They want to talk to a product expert faster in that process. And ultimately what that does is it condenses the way that companies engage with prospects, in that timing becomes shorter. And ultimately they want real tangible answers to the questions that they have, and they want to validate their feelings about whether purchasing NetSuite or going with NetSuite or not. They're also evaluating us, right, as a firm. They want to put a face to the name, and they want to be able to engage with a company that they feel they can build trust with, and build some rapport with early on. So that really was a swift learning curve for us, where we decided whenever we have leads that come through our marketing funnel, and whenever we start to have engagement, ultimately that needs to lead to product engagement with product experts, rather than being met with a true sales rep who may not have the details of the questions that our prospects are coming to us with. So really, it's important to publish good content, and to understand that buyers are educated. And in today's what people are terming now as product-led growth, I think ultimately the products are selling themselves, and people come to us ultimately with somewhat their minds made up. They really get 75% of the way there, and they really need us to take them the rest of the way to validate their assumptions, but also to answer specific questions about concerns that they might have. So I think that has been a tangible way for us, and the journey for us as we evolve as a company.
Do you think these companies and people are coming to you and Avocad and NetSuite in particular because they don't know what they don't know about the future of their business? We're talking about variation in business model, and I feel like NetSuite is one of the most flexible solutions in the marketplace out there to be able to deal with companies who are scaling at high growth. Avocad, I believe, is one of the best that I know at advising companies on business process as you go forward and try to try to adjust. Is that why these prospects and companies are coming to you specifically?
Yeah, and thanks for the compliments there, Keith. I would love to think so. We would have to we'd have to panel our current list of companies and figure out, what ultimately led them to that decision and what led them to us. But really, at the end of the day, I think the power of a referral and reference, really, you can't put a price tag on that. Going back to your point, to answer your question, I think absolutely yes. We have tried our best to model our business in such a way that doesn't look at one solution or one product in a silo. We try to look outside, the NetSuite box, if you will, knowing that we are the NetSuite experts and knowing that people come to us because they expect, a NetSuite expert to come implement for them. We try to take a step back from that and really look at businesses holistically, and from a technology stack perspective to understand where the company is now, where the pain points are, and doing a true gap analysis with these companies so that they're getting more out of this ERP implementation than just, ripping out a QuickBooks or a Xero or some other, ERP product that they might be on now to something more flexible and sophisticated and growth oriented as NetSuite is. And then I think the added layer to that is we saw that yes, NetSuite is flexible, but there are so many other add-ons that allow NetSuite to even be more powerful than it already is. And that's where really Zone comes into play. We started engaging with a lot of companies that had a lot of pain points with the way that they bill their customers, the way that they need to recognize revenue. And Zone was a really good fit there in terms of flexibility. And I think the other big advantage that Zone had that we really liked is that it sits on the NetSuite platform already. It doesn't require another integration point and another way for us to implement another product that sits outside of NetSuite. But really, because Zone is built on the NetSuite platform, it makes it really easy for our team not only to learn the product, but to implement product as we implement NetSuite for a company that we're already engaged with.
That comment rings true to me for sure. In terms of how you deal with variation and variability in your business, having it all in one application rather than a spaghetti map of applications definitely
Makes it a lot easier.
help. Yeah, help you to figure out where the future lies and help you to pivot when the unexpected happens. Because technology is one very critical, important aspect of preparing for changes in your business model. But you don't know what the future lies. We plan out a year ahead of time, 3 years ahead of time, 5 years ahead of time, what the business is going to look like. But mergers and acquisitions happen, the funding happens, changes in the board of directors, all kinds of unpredictable things
The
happen.
last 2 years have definitely shown us that there's a lot of unpredictability that you just can't plan for.
Zone in general reflects the marketplace that we're dealing with. When companies come to NetSuite, one of the similarities that I saw in my time at NetSuite, in my time at Zone, is that most of these companies are growing at a rapid rate and don't know what the future lies and are trying to prepare for this kind of event. But they don't know what the event is, per se.
Yeah, absolutely. And Keith, you probably see this as much as I do. You guys are crushing it right now in the marketplace, fair to say. But, I think technology companies specifically are really evolving more today, probably in a different trajectory than they have in the past. What we have noticed is that the true SaaS model and subscription billing is really shifting quite a bit. And as companies start to engage more directly with end users, and as companies come out of, hopefully are coming out of COVID, really it's changed the way that companies go to market. And if they decide to market their products a certain way, engage with consumers in a different way, that changes the way that they bill, or that they need to bill, or pivot from an existing business model. You have to have a plan, and you have to understand the impacts of how the business operates going forward using systems, to accommodate that. So really, the challenge today ultimately is not just about taking one solution and applying it across multiple companies. It really is sitting down, listening to what companies are going through today, understanding what they're trying to do in the future, knowing what they know, but also understanding that there has to be flexibility built into current processes and systems. And I think that's something that we really try to harp on and focus on is building solutions and scaling companies and helping them scale through products like NetSuite and Zone, but also helping them understand and realize the amount of flexibility that they do have and the ability to pivot quickly based on how the market changes. That's critical and important in today's landscape of technology companies.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and shamelessly plug our partners here, like Avocad, and talk about the fact that I said technology is only one aspect of preparing. Hiring firms like Avocad, where you can prepare for business process change rather than just technology change, and having advice from companies who have gone through it with their clients hundreds, thousands of times is really critical. It's not just technology. It's understanding how we have to change the organization, how we have to change the sales process. Business process is the underlying framework for all technology, right? And if your business process is faulty and completely variable every time you sell something, the technology needs to be able to consume every single different methodology that you approach sales with.
It's funny. Many of the companies that we engage with, we're typically working with folks in accounting and finance who, in many ways, bear the brunt of what sales and marketing decide to do from a go-to-market standpoint, right? Sales will say, hey, we just need to get in front of them and we need to package this however we need to get this deal done. And ultimately it's left to accounting and finance to sort of figure out how to deal with the impact of that on the back end. I really think, and Keith, we're working on a deal now where I think a good example of this is companies come to us many times without having all the pieces of the puzzle put together. So what I mean by that is they don't have a clear vision of what the future holds and what future state needs to look like. And they really do rely on companies like us and experts from Zone to really not only provide expertise from a systems standpoint, but to provide guidance and best practices towards what other companies may be doing in the market and in the same similar space that they're in, and being able to provide some tangible examples and details on how some other companies could do it, and offering that guidance is really critical to how we engage, and truly is a differentiator for us specifically as we go to market. Is for companies to understand that we're not just there to look at NetSuite and to take a bunch of requirements and take what they're doing today and put it into a new system that they're paying more for and investing more dollars into. It's really taking a step back from that and partnering with them and being a real advisor to the business as they grow, and helping them achieve those goals and realizing those goals along the way to make sure that how they implement systems is truly scalable and makes sense for the business as they grow.
And it's so important too, is they're doing that, as we've talked about on other podcasts, to really be prepared for that scaling as best they can. Because and we've talked about before, it's good to do that as early as you can in your business so that you are prepared. So Eric, what are some of the challenges that these companies are facing that's keeping them from being prepared for variation?
Yeah, sure. I think, and Keith touched on this a little bit, but sometimes companies don't know what they don't know. And, I think as you could use COVID as a perfect example. I think what we saw is that many of the companies that we were working with were forced to change the way that they engaged with their customers, and the way that they pushed products or upsold to these companies down the road. because they weren't able to sit shoulder to shoulder with them anymore. So it really requires a different way for companies to engage with end users, right? So really, something like that is impossible to prepare for, and the same was true for us. I think when we look back at that, we really had the benefit of already being a company that worked remotely and understood that environment a little bit. But had we not been prepared for that, right? Had we not already been working in that environment, it would have been a culture shock to us. And so that really, I think we still are experiencing, the changes of that. But I think that's a prime example. I also think that a lot of times companies are spending a lot of time just chasing their tails. And what I mean specifically by that is they're using old systems, they're using old processes. They've got a lot of manual things that they're doing across the business that is hindering them from being able to take a step back of what the company is doing today and trying to figure out where can we pull and press levers to change and gain more, efficiencies and data integrity across the way that we work. When we step into a project and when we allow people to take a step back from their day to day and say, all right, let's critically think about this for a moment and critically think about what you're doing today, and don't just focus on what the current day state is, but if you were to imagine a future state and what that possibly looks like for your company, what does that entail? And when we ask that question, I think we start to see the light bulb sort of go off in their minds, and they start to think more about what a efficient way to do certain processes are, rather than continuing to do what they're doing because they're just heads down and they're just trying to keep moving the ball forward as best they can with the systems that they have, with the processes that they have. It's helping them understand and realize, hey, there is a future state. You just got to take a step back to understand and realize that. It has been a really critical process for us to integrate into the way that we engage.
That's such a critical thing of what we're talking about here at Zone, and even just on this podcast, about looking at, we keep calling it forward finance, right? And really not thinking about what's behind you, but what's coming up down the line. You said companies are watching what's happening today when really they should be looking at what's going to be happening a year from now, 2 years from now. So that's awesome that you brought that up.
I think, to Eric's point, keeping the same business processes and chugging along and just continuing to do what you do today. The only way to keep on scaling through that model is to throw resources at it, is to add additional people and keep throwing resources at it under that model. You kind of have to flip the model on its head in order to be able to scale with it. In order to be able to scale, you have to take that top-down approach and focus upon the business and the change that you want to see in your business and how you're going to get there from the top down rather than the bottom up. The bottom up approach is resource heavy, and it eventually hits an inflection point of we don't have any more resources to throw at it. Whereas the top down approach plans accordingly and helps you to understand how we can change business process so fewer resources are necessary. And I think that's really how you can prepare for variation, but the challenge in doing so is obviously as you're scaling and as you're spending time and don't have the ability to think strategically and change your business models, you have to critically spend time changing your business models and changing your processes. It's a question of what came first, the chicken or the egg. You need to plan for both, right? And figure out exactly how to adjust for what you don't know in the future. Good answer, right? Easy thing to do. Plan for what you don't know.
I like the analogy of plan for the chicken and the egg. We don't know what's coming first, but plan for both. That's great.
Yeah, I think that's really key also, Keith. And if you think about it, a lot of times with the way that we engage, we're partnering with CFOs and controllers and really helping them realize some of this. Yeah, I remember a couple years back, NetSuite put a lot of content out there about this. And I think just in general, the private equity groups that we were working with and VCs all put a really heavy emphasis on the CFO not just being a reactive CFO, um, but really being proactive and being equipped with the right tools for them to not only look at what's in front of them immediately, but looking far past that. And they were really expected to be much more strategic than they ever had been in the past. And when I look across some of the companies that we work with that are experiencing unbelievable amount of growth and are leaders in their market space, it really goes back to a team of really smart individuals and a CFO that is super sharp and understands how to, run an efficient business, but also people who surround themselves with other thought leaders that are going to continue to push them and think really outside the box of what the business traditionally does and really extending that further and saying, hey, what if this happened? What would that do, for our company? What if this person was no longer available to, enter invoices on a monthly basis or, import this file on a monthly basis? If that person suddenly quits the company or no longer is here, what happens? If we lose this one Excel file that's 25 megabytes because we do our RevRec in Excel, what happens? What is the next step there? If we lose something that critical, that is a perfect example of where companies come to us and they're at that point where they're growing faster than they know what to do with, and they have these processes. And you look from the outside and you think, this is an all-star company. This is a blue chip technology company at the forefront of some of the best cutting edge technology that's out in the marketplace. And then you sort of look back and you think, wow, what they're doing right now, they are really just putting band-aids left and right to stay afloat, all the while looking at someone like us, someone like Zone, and more thought leaders to come in and say, guys, if we're not going to sync, just from the amount of deal flow and data flow that we have as a company, we're not going to make it, no matter how good our product is, because we're never going to be able to keep chasing our tails. We're always going to be looking at the now and what happened previously, rather than being able to again look forward and be prepared for the things that are unseen.
Yeah, it's risk assessment, right? It's identifying where that one spreadsheet that's going to take our entire company down lives and who has access to it, who that person is that's going to get COVID. I'll put it in current times rather than getting hit by a bus. That they're going to lose, and we can't manage without them. The old adage in accounting is governance, risk, compliance, and governance is processes, policies, and practices, and knowing how to run your business and making sure that everybody who works in your company knows how we're going to run our business into the future, planning for it, and then identifying those risks. There's a lot of risk as you scale. There's a lot of people who are doing things in their head, and those things exist only in their head. And how do we get it out, get it onto paper, make it repeatable, and automate it ideally?
Yeah. This is something we talk a lot about internally, and something you were kind of getting to there, Eric, is that, what would happen if these CFOs didn't have to worry about a lot of these processes? What if they didn't have to worry about, like we've talked about, keeping track of that 25-year-old Excel sheet, or however long it goes? They could really focus on some of these forward-looking readiness and risk management and things like this. So that's a huge thing. I'm glad you brought that up.
When I look at some of my close contacts and people who are dear friends that are CFOs, and I look at the ones that are wildly successful and are real thought leaders in their companies, they have the ability to look at the business in a different vantage point than just on the spreadsheets and the things that are presented to them on a daily basis. Because don't get me wrong, those guys and gals are inundated with tasks and questions on a daily basis, and fighting fires on a daily basis, right? They are just trying to go from one fire to the next to figure out, oh gosh, like, we weren't prepared for this, or it's just hey, we had something crazy happen, at a client, and we got to resolve this. Help us think through that. So they've got all that to deal with already. All the while, you may have a business that's trying to understand the landscape in which they're in and how it's changing, how it's shifting, and trying to adapt to that quickly. You're just piling on too much to where if you are running things inefficiently and you have old antiquated ways of getting things done, where there are products out there, there are platforms out there that are literally helping companies automate some of these functions, then you're already behind the curve, right? You're already behind the eight ball there in terms of being able to be nimble and agile and adapt quickly to a changing environment. I think that, to me, is the most critical of all. I think the companies that look critically at themselves and say, guys, we are not running effectively, and here are the areas that we can really improve on, and proactively going out and resolving those things, are the companies that are out there crushing it. Whereas the companies that come to us that are already, underwater, already, struggling to get out of just the mounds of issues that they're going through, those are the ones that go through a lot harder growing pains, right? In getting out and digging themselves out of that, and really starting to put one foot in front of the other in an effective way.
So guys, I think to really sum up our conversation, it sounds like to prepare for variation, it's really important to have great technology that's flexible, and is up to date and gives you the flexibility to look forward. But then also having a company or a partner that can really help guide you through that. Is there anything else that we've missed, or that really could help a company prepare?
Yeah, when I think about companies today that are growing, that are adapting to, again, everything that we talked about, the landscape and how they go to market. Really, what we have done as a company is to really try to drive home the importance of surrounding yourselves with people who are frankly smarter than you. And I think that's what we've tried to do. I think that's what I've tried to do. That's why I surround myself with people like Keith, really partnering with thought leaders and partnering with people who are engaged on the front lines, I should say. So, that's what we encourage our folks to do. That's what I frankly try to do is, until you get down in the dirt with these companies and you truly begin to look at what they're going through and how they're trying to adapt to change, how they're trying to solve those problems that they're encountering on a daily basis. It's hard to really conceptualize and make tangible in people's minds how real that truly is. So I think it's critical for us as a business, as we evolve, as we adapt to variability, to bring people on, not only that look at what is happening today and what features and functions are out there today, but always looking that one step forward to figure out what else is out there that's going to help us do this better. Because ultimately, as we grow as a company and as we continue to be relied upon as a NetSuite leader, companies are going to come to us more and more with these problems, right? And they're going to need some tangible ways and answers to how we would approach them. And unless we have solutions that we've thought through, that we've vetted out, that we've kicked the tires on, we would never have been able to go to market with something like Zone to say, hey, here's a product that we've come across that truly is flexible, that is going to help you build and grow your business in a real way. Unless we have those tangible examples, it's hard for us to engage and really make an impact to companies that come to us for that expertise. I think that's critical in today's space, and I think that's what has allowed us to be successful as a business, and really value this partnership and appreciate you guys having me on something like this to not only talk about us, but really talk about how Zone is in the market, just making a splash and is becoming a big player in this space. I think it's awesome, and it's been fun so far, and looking forward to continuing the partnership together.
I think you used two words that I want to try to wrap up with. It's people and fun. We talked a lot about technology. We talked a lot about business process, but at the end of the day, it's all humans that are running all of this stuff. And I love both humans on this call, and I like the humans that I work with, the partners, our employees here at Zone, and have fun together. Make sure that when you're working 14-hour days, if you're working like that, to be able to laugh and realize that there's only so much each human out there can do. So do what you can.
Eric and Keith, we've had a great conversation today about how to prepare for variation, how to have fun. We've talked about. I'm sure everyone watching and listening was able to walk away with some great tips here. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having us here. Really appreciate the time and the conversation. It really makes us think critically about some of this stuff, but appreciate you having us.
Now, we want to hear from you. How do you prepare for variation in your business? Let us know by emailing hello@zoneandco. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to Finance in the Clouds wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time. Bye.